Hi there, it's Tanya here. So this week on Radio Rima, Andrew and I had a very important discussion all about food and what it's like to be stuck in the craziness of that obsession. The cycle of shame, I call it. Anyway, during the interview, we also give you a solution. We talk about how you can break these patterns, how you can show up differently in your life and put this problem behind you. It's about making a decision though, saying yes to you, saying yes to life, and believing that there is another way. So just sit around and wait for the interview to start. But also you can click on the link below in the comments area where I will give you resources that can help you get started on this journey. Okay, bye for now and enjoy the interview.
Tanya, kia ora, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing very well indeed. Much brighter than last week. Not more intelligent necessarily, just a bit more skip in my step. But the topic that I'm wanting to talk about today, look, this is something which I know is a topic that you've helped a lot of people with. There's a whole bunch of people that struggle with this. I mean, all of us struggle with it to an extent, but it's also part of your own journey, and that is our relationship with food and how that affects the way in which we see ourselves. This is a biggie. This is one of the giants in some ways.
Oh, it really is. It's monumental, actually. And that's one thing I want to say to people. It's also very common.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stops us all from getting help is the shame that we carry about this. So that's why I'm inviting you to say, hey, there's a few of us out here who have had this and have overcome it, and there is another way. So just know it's not only you. You're not alone here.
You're not alone, and also other people who have travelled this road have found some strategies which have helped them, and that is certainly your story. I know there's lots of resources on your website. If you click on the Food Issues tab, you've got a book you've written on the topic and a whole bunch of other resources, and I'd encourage people to go there. But what is it about food? Tanya, what is it about our relationship with food that causes us to stumble so often, do you think?
Well, for many of us, it's comfort. It's our friend, especially during times of anxiety, loneliness. We all meet our needs in certain ways. And when we are feeling the need for comfort or connection, even, and if you don't connect with another human being, then you tend to connect with something else. And it's often a substance or even a behavior. And food is one of the easiest ways to fulfill that need of comfort. And it's so easy to reach for.
It is. I mean, the accessibility is a huge part of the problem. Now, I'm not saying that this is the case for everybody, but for some people there is addictive or obsessive behaviours when it comes to food. But all of us are somewhere probably on that spectrum in terms of the way in which we respond in our relationship with food. What's different than some of the other addictions, though, it's what we need. It's almost like being addicted to oxygen. We can, some of the other negative sort of self-medicating behaviours that we can turn to, we can remove ourselves from that temptation, but we can't remove ourselves from food. It's quite unique in that regard.
It is, and it makes it one of the hardest ones to break. And you might know or have heard of people who have stopped drinking or have stopped doing other things, but then they start eating the sugar or the excess in other foods, so it's a very easy one to slip into because we need food to nourish our bodies. And so we have to face food 2, 3, 4 times a day. And that is where we then need to go, okay, what is it that I'm actually trying to fill inside? There's a gap inside me. I used to fill it with alcohol or whatever, but now I'm trying to fill it with food. And this is where the work begins. Why am I doing this? How does the food meet my need? Why am I feeling this way about myself, that I fill myself up with excess food to the point where I feel sick? And then that creates this negative identity of self, that we don't feel worthy of love, we don't feel worthy of being healthy, and I may as well just go and eat some more. You get into that terrible cycle of shame and unworthiness.
And it is that, I suppose, that aspect of our relationship, not just with food, but with ourselves, the way we see ourselves, that awful comparison trap with other people. And I suppose food in some context is associated with our self-image and whether or not we are lovable or whether we can even like ourselves. It's a nasty pit to fall into.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why when I'm working with clients in this area, we start at the very beginning of our working relationship to work on the identity, work on your identity. Who are you? Who am I? Who am I really? And I am worthy. I am lovable. The Lord loves me. I've already succeeded, in inverted commas, whatever that means for you. And it's about building that strong personal identity of who you are. And then when you go into the kitchen, that when you're in that identity, you don't want to hurt yourself with excess food. You stand there and go, actually, this isn't who I am anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've changed and I see who I am. I am worthy, I am lovable, and I don't do this to myself because I do love who I am and I accept who I am, so I'm not going to abuse myself that way. So that's why it's so important, yes, to look at the physical side of what you're eating and that, but more importantly, change that identity of self.
That is so helpful, really, because, I mean, you're talking beforehand about sometimes for people, food issues can be replacing some other issues that they've dealt with, or it may be stress eating, or it may be just something to give them a dopamine hit so they can get through whatever crisis that they're facing at the moment. Different people may have different triggers, and food is kind of like at the bottom of the pyramid because we can't replace that totally, but we can replace that with a positive self-identity that doesn't need the soothing that food gives us in that way.
Yes. So definitely have that strong personal identity, because you wouldn't do that to someone you love. So why would you do it to yourself? The same kind of thing. But it also means finding other ways to meet your needs, finding other ways to get that dopamine hit or that excitement in your life. Some people do it through exercise, walking, prayer, journaling, creativity, dancing. There's so many other ways to get that hit, because what we know is that hit with food is so temporary.
Yeah.
Because the more you eat, the worse you feel, and then waking up the next day is just horrid. So find other ways to meet your need, whatever that need is within.
And in particular, if food is compensating for some type of self-image problem or some type of body image problem and all of that type of stuff, it just becomes a vicious downward spiral. Being able to identify that and say, hey, let's work on knowing the reason why and putting some positive things into the space that food is filling at the moment. It can seem, when you're stuck in that space, like it's impossible. But the other thing, I suppose, about the work that you do, you've got so many stories of hope of people who have made a transformational difference.
Well, I've got many, many, many stories of hope, and mine included. For me, it started when I was 14, and it's been one big, big journey. And I am here to tell you that there is life on the other side. And I know what it takes. I know it's commitment. You must decide, though. Do I want to keep living this way in suffering, or do I want to make a change and believe that there is another way? Someone else has told me there's another way.
Yeah.
I don't quite know it yet, but someone else has told me I'm going to go for it and I'm going to decide.
A way of breaking the cycle of putting some more hope into your life. And, if you go to the Tanya Unkovich website, if you click on the Food Issues tab, the journey can start there. Tanya, thank you so much for the work that you do. I know that this will have a huge impact on people whose lives are affected in this way, but thank you for the work that you do. Thanks for joining us today.
It is my pleasure.